Again, thank you for joining us today for this session of the AgrAbility National Training Workshop Encore webinar series. Our topic today is taking care of all generations on the farm, and our presenters are Karin Rasmussen from Kansas AgrAbility and Cassie Ramon from Assistive Technology for Kansans. If some of you are not familiar with AgrAbility, we are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. The focus of our program is to assist people in agriculture that have some kind of disability or functional limitation. Every one of the AgrAbility projects around the country is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. And currently, we have 21 state projects around the country. In addition to those state projects, there's one national AgrAbility project. And again, that's led here at Purdue University through the Breaking New Ground Resource Center. Our partners on that national AgrAbility grant include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance, AgriSafe Network, Colorado State University, and Washington State University. If you'd like more information about AgrAbility, feel free to visit agrability.org. We have more than 130 archived webinars available there for your viewing and a variety of different other information related to disability in agriculture. I want to introduce our presenters for today. Karin Rasmussen grew up on a farm in northeast Kansas and helped with row crops, livestock, an orchard, and a large vegetable garden. She now lives in western Kansas and works with farmers and ranchers and their families to find solutions to help them continue working on the farm or ranch and living independently in their homes. She also spends time juggling a large home garden, canning, preserving, sewing, quilting, and spoiling grandchildren. Cassie Ramon grew up in eastern Colorado, where she helped develop her family's tree farm, installing drip irrigation and digging lots of holes. She worked with farmers, ranchers, and people with disabilities or health conditions of all ages to find simple solutions or more complex solutions so that they can continue working and living safely in their homes. She and her multi-generational family enjoy having a variety of pets and routinely experiment with accessible gardening options. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn things over to Karin and Cassie for the presentation.
All right. So everybody is here today for taking care of all the generations on the farm. We are going to talk about using automated devices or smart home devices to keep people hopefully, on the farms longer, and some various ways of using those things. Karin, if you want to advance the slide. So Paul told you a little bit about who we are and where we've come from, but Karin and I are assistive technology specialists in Kansas, and with the push toward smart home devices and all this automation stuff, we really wanted to explore how we could use these devices on the ag front, and also in the houses of the ag front. When we go out and do our AgrAbility assessments, we like to look at the whole person, and that includes ways we can help in the house. What we are going to talk about today is how to use these devices for supporting dependent family members. You'll see in the next slide, I had my grandmother live with me in the home for 7 years with dementia, progressively getting worse. And as things progressed, we had to kind of change tactics. So I will talk to you about that a little bit. And then Karin is really going to highlight some uses on the farm and ranch, using them remotely to help monitor things. What we will cover is types of devices and some examples or ideas on how they can be used. What we won't talk about is specific setups, information about Wi-Fi or voice controlled assistants, which one's better, Alexa, Google, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to go into that. We will talk about, if a device needs Wi-Fi to function, if it can function through Bluetooth, applications for setup and control. We will not endorse one product over another. Part of our job and kind of what we pride ourselves on is we like to explore all kinds of different things and see what one product offers from another product, you know, and different applications for those things. The other thing that I'd like you to keep in mind while we give this presentation is that with all technology, it is always changing. What's on the market today won't be there next week, and those devices are constantly changing. So we tried to keep this presentation you know, very non-specific for that purpose, so that it can hold up over time to just, you know, maybe get you thinking outside the box or give you some ideas on how it can be used. So there you'll see the picture. That's me with my grandmother. And like I said, she's 95, has lived with us for 7 years with progressing dementia. And we developed a lot of really interesting tactics to keep her in the home as long as we could. So I'm going to start us off by talking about cameras. So cameras have unlimited uses, and I'm continually finding new uses for my cameras. But what you'll see in the pictures here is this is actually a setup of my house. And if you look closely, you can see Grandma sitting there on the couch. The little red circles indicate devices that we had, you know, set up in our house. So we have, if you look at the front door, we have automated door locks so that, you know, we can control entry to and from the house. In the far back corner on a shelf, you will see that is our home security system. So it also alerts when doors are open and closed. We can arm it when we leave. And then next to it, below the J on the back wall, is our Nest thermostat. And we can use that to regulate temperature in the house for Grandma when we're not home. And I'll also talk some more about what these devices do specifically as we progress through the slides. In the far back corner up at the top, you can see one of the cameras that we use. And that camera is actually taking the picture of the lower view. So that's what that camera sees. Switching to the bottom picture, I have the light circled next to Grandma. That's actually a smart light bulb that we can control for her. You know, as we age with vision concerns and things like that, it was important for us to be able to turn on lights as it got darker in the house for her as a safety concern. At the front by the TV, you can see another small camera, and that is our hub device. And we can pull up video on there. I can see her, so that's taking the picture on the top. So that's our view from that camera, and I can talk to her 2 ways via that camera. Above the front door, there's a little circle there. That's actually a door sensor that alerts us when the door opens and closes. And then just kind of a little fun side note, we'll talk a little bit about, you know, how you can use things to help with animal things. My son has a bearded dragon, and we use sensors and plugins to be able to turn off and on the heat light and also the daytime light. So again, cameras, we can use those in ways to watch for falls. So throughout the day, periodically, I could check on Grandma for falls or wandering. We have cameras on the front porch, so I could see if she were to exit the house and start off down the street, I would know, you know, which direction she headed, what time she left. You can use them for appliances to monitor, like if a stove is on, helping with meals, 2-way communication. Like I said, I've communicated with her via the camera, let her know, you know, that it was okay, somebody was on the way. If she did fall, I could tell her that I knew she'd fallen and we were on the way. And we can ensure other devices are working. Like here you can see our TV. I actually can control the TV wirelessly too. So, you know, making sure that her shows are on. With dementia, keeping her busy was a big thing. And so I could change things if she wasn't interested. And then again, like I mentioned, turning lights on and off to make sure that she can see okay. So, and then Karen's going to talk about how using them on the farm. Sorry, Karin.
No problem. So exactly what Cassie said. I'm going to show you how we were taking those great ideas that Cassie used in her home to keep track of grandma. How can the farmer or rancher use those at home and on their ranch? So on the top left, we have a picture of a camera. It is, it's a Samsung camera, and it's actually on the porch. So this farmer and his wife both work in town, but they have it on the porch so that when their kids come home, they know that their kids are home and they're safe and so forth like that. So that's on the top left picture. On the bottom left is a house that's in a small rural community, and it's a Blink camera that is actually mounted on a power pole. And as you can see, it's facing the house. It's got a really good shot of the house, the tractor, the camper, and so forth. And this individual used to live in this tiny town with his dad. They each had their own home, but then his dad was put in an assisted living center, and he actually moved to a town 45 minutes away. But he still needed to keep track of his home. So he uses the Blink camera to monitor both houses, whereas before he would have to drive once or twice a week or check with a neighbor to check on his house. And here he saves a lot of time and a lot of mileage by using the Blink camera posted in front of his houses to monitor them. On the right is screenshots of, actually, excuse me, the bottom left one is a Wise camera, and the screenshots of the cameras are on the right are the Blink camera. And these are taken by a farmer who also has a small cabin that he rents out to hunters. And the top picture, it says front door, that is facing the front door. And it has recording an option, a playback. It takes videos. It has a playback option, a live screen, and motion detection. So when his hunters come, he can actually talk to them and say, hey guys, welcome to my cabin. Hope you have a great hunting time while you're here. If you have any questions, my phone's on, numbers on the table, and so forth. The bottom picture is the same little cabin that he has, but it's taken further away with a different camera. And he made a comment to me that he said, it's in a rural area, but he said he was surprised how many people drove through his driveway all the time. And he never realized that. I mean, there's a road 30 yards away that they could stay on, but no, they drive through his driveway. And he gets a notice all the time that those people, that, there's a vehicle coming through his driveway. But it's a nice security thing for him, because most of the time, because he lives in a small community, he knows who they are. If he didn't recognize the vehicle, this would be a nice way for him to be alerted that maybe he needs to go check things out or have someone else go check it out. So another example that we have is an Elk-on outdoor doorbell with security camera. So this individual, he works in town, but on weekends he goes to the farm to help his dad, and he's gone all weekend. So with this outdoor Elk-on outdoor doorbell system, when somebody walks up to his front door, he gets a notice on his phone. He can see who they are, and he can actually talk to them. So if it's a UPS driver, he could say, hey, I'm not going to be there for a while. Could you put that box behind the bush, so that it's out of sight from anybody driving by? So that's his nice little security system for him when he's gone on a long weekend helping his dad work. The picture to the right, you can see it circled in red. There's actually a Weiss camera mounted behind the picture window. And it too has a motion detector, night vision, two-way audio, which they really don't need because it's behind the picture window. But the alerting, the motion detection is really good for him because, when he's farming and ranching, he is gone from sunup until sundown. So this way he could see if a package got left on his porch or if somebody came by, he gets that notification.
Something I want to hit on here, we've shown you guys quite a few different angles and views and how we're using them. All the cameras we've talked about here do use Wi-Fi. So they would need to have a Wi-Fi connection to be able to send those alerts, do the recordings, being able to see a live feed from those cameras would require a Wi-Fi connection. And something I like to talk about with cameras is the options are ever growing, like we mentioned in the first slide. The brands and the sizes and the mounting, and it just keeps growing. So one thing to really take into consideration is where you're going to be placing this camera and what you want the camera to do. So, you know, in my case, in those first couple of pictures we showed you, we had a combination of cameras. We had cameras that we could just see, you know, what was happening. We had some that were only live feeds and some that recorded. We had some that recorded only when certain things happened. So we had rules set up. So the living room, the one in the far back corner in the living room, only recorded when the front door opened and closed. Otherwise, it was just a live view. We had the one at the front by the TV had a microphone so that we could talk back and forth. It also was able to recognize a person. And so I would get an alert the way that we had it positioned. When grandma would stand up out of that chair to go to the bathroom, I would get an alert that the camera recognized a person. And I could actually teach it people's faces. And so it would tell me that grandma had entered the living room, or you know, so we wanted that one placed very strategically. We wanted it to alert when she got up out of that chair, because then I could start kind of keeping a mental note of the time that she got up and when I thought she should be back. And if she hadn't come back, I could start checking other cameras to see what was happening. And then we had a Ring doorbell on the front that would activate when our screen door opened. So if grandma opened the screen door, our Ring doorbell would say motion was detected. I could check that camera. So basically I could track her movements through the house, but taking into consideration what it is you're wanting those cameras to do ahead of time, so that you can try to find a brand that can serve those purposes. And maybe one brand has various cameras that do that for you. So you're only having to stick with one type of camera that does different things.
Very good points. So here's another camera. This is the Foss camera. And these are pictures taken from a barn. This ranch is operated by the original rancher plus his two sons. And they have a pretty extensive cow herd operation. And in the wintertime, when it's super, super freezing cold, they let especially the first year heifers and some of the other cows into their barn. And they have got 3 of these Foss cameras mounted in their barn. And they really like them because in addition to night vision, they also can rotate them as they're viewing the barn from their camera. And it also, like the wife of one of them said she really likes the zoom, because then she can zoom in. Is that just a black cow laying down, or is that a new black calf that I see? So as Cassie pointed out, you really need to know what you need, what features you need to help that camera, to help to decide what camera you want. So in this case, the Foss camera has audio, but they're really not going to talk to the cows. But that night vision, because it's dark, and that zoom capabilities is really important to them. And the other brother said what he really likes is he likes the fact that he can swivel or turn the camera. So he has his phone and he's on his app, and there's a button that he could push, and he can actually rotate that camera around the barn of the area that it's at to check all the cows. And they pointed out, years ago, they used to get up 2 to 3 times a day or during the night to check their cows. And now they just roll over in bed, look at their phone, see that the cows are happy. If everything's fine, they go back to sleep. They said it's a major time saver for them. They're not as exhausted during calving season, and they're just super happy with being able to put this up, have the cows in a safe place, but still monitor them and not be so taxing on them. So that's with the Foss camera. here, and you can see this is a live shot from their camera, a phone, and over here as well, the bottom, this, I can think, can you see, Cassie, can they see my mouse? Okay, so this is a screenshot from their camera, and another screenshot, and then up here, they have a screenshot too, where they can see the baby calf, and they know, hey, it's up moving, it's okay, we're all right. So we have another example. This is an individual who raises goats, and he sells a lot of his goats to the 4-H kids. And he got he used a local computer vendor to put up his cameras in his barn. So we see up here on the top left, he's got a camera mounted up here, and on the bottom left, another camera mounted. And he did not know the brand because it really went through this computer vendor. But what was important to him, he had them angled at a certain place. These cameras did not move. They did not rotate. He could not rotate them from his phone. They were specifically towards a pin in his little goat barn. So the middle picture is actually a screenshot from his phone where he's able to check on a goat with her 2 babies. And then on the right is just a picture that we took from them afterwards as well. So there again, for his purpose, because it was a small area, his cameras didn't need to rotate, move around. He just needed to be able to angle them at a certain angle to shoot down into the corrals. So this is my little friend called Knox, and he has an egg production business where he has chickens. And currently he has 30 golden sex link hens. And he takes a lot of pride in the fact that he waters them, he feeds them, he gathers the eggs, and he takes his eggs to town and collects the money for those eggs. And they had a little incident earlier than when I took these pictures and talked to them, where they had an incident with a heat lamp came down and they lost a lot of their chickens. So when he got these chickens, he wanted to take care of them. So they got a FOSS cam as well. And as you can see in the center picture, this one's different. This is about a year older than the ones that you saw a little bit ago with the cows. And again, it has the rotating purposes. It can zoom in, it can zoom out. You could talk to the chickens. It also has recording options, so you could check on them. So he's pretty proud of the fact that when mom picks him up from school or from daycare, that he can look at her phone and he can see his chickens, because I have a screenshot here on the right that's taken with their phone, and he could see his chickens right over here on the right side. And on the bottom, you could see some of the controls that are on with the app that are on the phone. So there's one in the middle that I'm circling. That's the one that rotates the camera. And then the one on the right, the next to it takes a picture. Here he could, the next one to the right, he could talk to his chickens, and then he can also videotape them. Both parents work in town. It's about a 15-20 minute ride to get back home to check on the chickens. So having this camera keeps them at work, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of gas, and keeps the chickens safe. So he was pretty excited about being able to monitor his chickens when he's not at home too. So now next we have some individuals who have horses. And on the left, this horse owner, she works again in town, and she's about 30 miles away, but she has a camera mounted outside her barn. And here we have a screenshot of her husband loading, unloading something, and the horses are checking him out. But she can see that, hey, he's doing what he said he was going to do, and the horses are just fine. So this is how she monitors her horses during the day when she's at work. In the middle picture, we see a mare about to foal in the barn, and this person has a camera mounted on the wall that's facing the mare. And what she's done is she has actually shared her app and her app link or her app code with a person, another person, and that person could be a veterinarian. And so while she's monitoring her horse to see how she's doing, if she has any trouble, she can actually text her veterinarian or her good friend and say, hey, I'm not sure about how my horse is doing. Could you go into my app and just look at the camera feed, and it'd be a live camera feed, and see what you think. Do you need to come out? Are we okay? And so forth. So it's a great way for her to monitor what's going on and even talk. Maybe she's there with the horse, and maybe they're communicating back and forth while she's there. And, maybe that person could give her some help or some advice. And then if necessary, that person could come out and help. But if not, maybe they're just there verbally to help her, guide her through the process. And on the right, you can see the baby foal. This is a screenshot taken afterwards. So everything arrived perfectly well. So anyway, just a nice security thing for them.
Before we move on, I also want to talk a little bit on the cameras. One of the topics of discussion when we presented this at the NTW was about, Wi-Fi. And if anything good came from COVID, it is that places were forced to make sure that people had access, for school, for doctor's appointments, things like that. And so here, we serve a lot of very rural Kansas. And just in the last 2 years through COVID, I really saw an increase in the accessibility of access to Wi-Fi and decent internet, where you're going to get a signal big enough to handle these cameras and things. And it was brought up in the live session about like boosters. So you may have Wi-Fi, at the house, but it doesn't reach the barn. So what has become more accessible are things called Wi-Fi boosters. And so basically, you have a booster at the house that pushes the signal, and then you have a booster at the barn that retrieves that signal. And so you're able to extend that Wi-Fi to a certain location. So I know, 4 years ago here in rural Kansas, a lot of these weren't an option. Because there wasn't access, there wasn't good enough Wi-Fi, there wasn't a strong enough signal, but that has really changed. And if you think that that's a barrier, for some of your farmers or for yourself, I would really encourage you to look at the options that are available, because so much of that has changed because of COVID. So I wanted to really touch on that as we look at some of those more remote cameras, and that there has been a huge shift in that availability. All right, and sorry, Karin, go ahead.
No, I said, I'm moving on.
Yep. So we are going to talk about plugs and light bulbs. And I personally like the challenge of thinking of ways that I can use plugins for new things that I haven't got to try yet. So the kicker with the plugins is it has to be a device that powers on and powers off. It can't go to a standby. It can't have multiple modes after it's turned on. It needs to be something where I hit a button, it comes on, I hit a button, it goes off. The exception to this would be a fan that could be left on a certain speed. Then you turn the device to a certain speed, plug it in, and then you would just use the plug-in. Basically what they do is they work like a switch to turn the power on and off. So again, I'm huge on preventing falls. I feel like this was one of the things that I didn't really consider when we first started setting all of this up at home for grandma, and how big a difference it made. We'd leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go fishing, and you get out there and you don't want to leave, and it's getting dark, and I could look at the camera and see the house was getting dark. And at first I did not consider this enough, and we started adding more light bulbs, more plugins, to be able to turn on lights for her. She wouldn't always think to flip a switch and turn on a light. She would walk into a dark room, not really realizing it was a dark room. So again, huge in helping to prevent falls. And this can be automated. It's not something that you have to do manually. So you can set them up to turn off at dark. You can set them to turn on at a certain time. And Karin will talk about, how an individual of hers used that in a different sense. But, for your elderly folks, or, if you come home late and the house is dark, having lights on when you come home and being able to automate that. turning fans on and off throughout the day if it's getting hot or cold. That could be huge to somebody even with a disability that can't turn on a fan, an amputation, one-handed or partial paralysis, things like that, where they struggle to turn those on. We could use these in that sense too. And then light bulbs. There are all kinds of light bulbs. Let me just say that. And again, it is continually growing. So outside options, all weather options, they just get better and better. What they can do and how they function, and different assortments for, like your motion sensor lights, things like that. They can be used to create different lighting effects. Some are dimmable, some are not. Some can change different colors, which has been a fun thing in our house for the holidays, being able to play with the different colors. Again, setting up routines, turning them on and off at certain times. They even have now, situations where you can set up when you pull into the driveway and your phone connects to your Wi-Fi, you can turn on your porch light. It'll detect that you're there in the driveway and the porch light will come on. So again, these are two things that I find are a fun challenge to come up with new ways to use. So we are going to give you some examples on how we've used some.
So I just might add that when they talk about things that we have plugged in our house, our toaster, our kids' Xbox games, our electric toothbrush, our phone chargers, they call those energy suckers. And they say that about 10% of our electricity bill goes to those things. So if you want to save a little money on your electricity bill, you might consider some of these smart bulbs and plugs that we're going to talk about. And the one on the left is this is in one of the farmer's home. He has a daughter who, when she goes to bed, she likes to listen to music. And she says, "Hey, Alexa, turn on the music." Well, he has it set up with the smart plug so that it automatically turns off in 30 minutes, because he said she'll go to sleep and the radio will be playing and she'll be asleep and can't hear the music. So he has it set so it automatically turns off in 30 minutes. In the middle picture here, this is another one of his smart plugs that he has in his home. He says, "I have my Christmas lights, my diffusers, my sensors, my coffee pots, my ceiling fan. I have a lot of things plugged into these." And he said he's trying to save energy, and he has them set on a timer to go on and off at certain times of the day. And Cassie, can you talk about the light on some of the appliances? Because that's when this coffee pot reminds me of the light.
Yeah, so any device that you have that has a display, a clock, so it's always displaying a clock, or it has a little tiny light that stays on to tell you that, and some of them even have a light that tell you it's off by turning red, but then that light stays red the whole time that the device is off. So that's a power sucker. It's using energy to keep that light red. And you might not think that's very much, but think of all the devices you have in your house that have like a little display or a little light that tells you it's off when it's really not off. So a lot of the smart plugs, you'll see in the picture there, the surge protector. We recently added one of these surge protectors to our house. Our house is like the playhouse. It's where everybody comes to hang out. And one of the cool things all the boys like are the remote control cars. Right. And so they're constantly having to be recharged. So we always have battery packs and cars and things plugged into these surge protectors. As long as that is in there, it's like a trickle charge to that battery. So when that battery starts to lose a little bit of its juice, it'll recharge it back up. So the whole time that car or those batteries are plugged in, it's going to pull power every time that battery drains a little bit. So what I can do now is I have one of these surge protectors. Every once in a while, I can jump on real quick and say, "Ooh, is that still on?" And I can turn it off, and then it's off. So now nothing is pulling that power. Nothing is draining energy passively while we are unaware of it. And that passive energy adds up to be fairly significant when you think of all the devices that are using it.
An example that I have is I in the evening at night, I charge my smartphone, and it only takes 4 hours to charge. So I use a smart plug to stay on for 4 hours, and after 4 hours, it's off. So I'm saving a little bit of energy every night that I charge my smartphone. So going on into some more options then, and examples for you to see, is on the left side that we're back at Knox's chicken coop. And Dad bought this common sense 2 smart outlet plug that he has powered by an extension cord that he has running from the barn to the chicken coop. And it operates 2 heat lamps. And this chicken coop has, like I said, they had a little issue with the heat lamp. So they got the camera, but the chicken coop also has a south facing window. And in Western Kansas in the winter, that south window could bring in a lot of heat. So he can check, if he's at work, check his phone, check the temperature outside, and he could turn these lamps on and off by using this smart outlet, just by using the app on his phone. So he's hopefully saving the chickens and keeping them a little bit more comfortable. The picture on the bottom right is my farmer who uses the LED smart bulbs in his house. And he has these set up with his Samsung SmartThings system on a timer system so that they go on at sunset and they go off at 11 o'clock. And that they have this going on when they're there, but then they like to travel too, especially on weekends and especially spring break with their kids and so forth. So this is a security system for them to have these going like this. So
All right.
We have door locks and sensors.
All right. So I didn't really think that I was going to be as super excited about this as I was when we first got it. I was like, that's great. Well, we ended up using it a lot more than we thought. So you'll see there the lock and unlock deadbolts. So again, the wandering, back to grandma. So I could set up a rule that when the door was unlocked during a certain time of the day, it would alert me. So I would leave, lock the door. And like I said, remember, grandma had a progressive dementia. So when we first started installing these things, wandering wasn't an issue. She could stay home alone during the day. And we didn't really have any issues with her, going to the door, going outside, anything like that. Then we progressed to where we had certain days where she would be interested in what was going on outside, and she'd want to try to go out on the porch and things. So I would get an alert that the door had been unlocked. And then we also had the door sensors, like you see in the lower video there. They basically, one goes on the door and one goes on the wall, and they have basically like magnets. And when those magnets are separated, they detect that movement and they'll send you an alert. So we had door sensors, and we would start getting alerts that grandma was on the move. And, I could monitor and see, is she just looking out? Is she going out? Then as we progressed through, she started going out on the front porch and yelling for people, to help her and things like that. So we had supports in place, but it was trying to maintain until those supports could get there. And one was our next door neighbor. And so it got to the place where grandma would unlock the door and I would lock the door. I could do it from my app. So grandma would unlock it, I'd lock it back before she could get the knob unlocked. And then at the same time that I'm doing that with her, I can message or call the neighbor and say, hey, can you go over and just talk to grandma, calm her down and get her sat back down. Then we progressed to where we had to have home health aides come and work with her. So we were able to then set up unique codes for those home health aides. So every aide could have their own code set up that they would put in. And this was helpful, not only for them, but for me. I could go in and see what codes access the door at what time. So I knew when they came and when they left. And that was really nice monitoring. We were private paying for a while, so being able to see that they were there for the time that they said that they were there really mattered. And I was very upfront with the home health aides about, you know, our smart home technology, how we used it. They knew that there were monitors, they knew that there were cameras and things like that. And then the door and window sensors, again, are just really helpful, of course, in wandering, and then also security in the rural settings, being able to know if something's been accessed when it's not supposed to. Something to consider, again, the door locks and sensors are a lot like the cameras. There's all kinds and types and shapes and sizes. You'll see in that top picture, there's some that have keypads with also a key access, so I could use a key or a keypad. You know, that might be important. There's some with actual shaped buttons that you press, and then there's some that are just like a touchpad keypad, and those are all things to take into consideration on who you're using it for. So is low vision an issue? Is comprehension an issue? Things like that. But the options are limitless. So, you know, making sure that you think about what it is that you're needing out of that door lock.
So some examples of using the sensors is on the left side is, you can see circled in red, there's actually a sensor and it's hooked onto the garage door. And this is set up so that if it is open for more than 2 hours, the farmer gets a notice on his phone to say, hey, your garage door is open. And then he can remotely close it from his phone app. And in the center picture is actually a screenshot of his phone app. And you can see on the bottom, it says outdoor, there's garage door truck east is closed, garage door truck west is closed. And if it wasn't closed, he could close it from this point. He also, you can see also on this picture, the front door is closed, the back door. So he's got sensors on his garage doors, front doors, and back doors of his house. In a little bit, I'm going to talk about the water sensor, and I'm going to show you those pictures. But on this same screenshot, he has a water sensor close to second floor, and then also in his utility room. And I jumped that way anyway, by accident. Anyway, so this is a picture here where he's got the backdoor sensor mounted, and you can see in this picture that it's closed. Here is the sensor that's down in his basement because it's a water sensor. And this was awesome that they had this because they actually were gone for like a week on vacation. And they normally have their parents come and check on their house. And they actually had a massive rain. It rained and rained and rained, and they had some flooding in their basement. And the sensor went off, and he was hundreds of miles away, but he got a warning on his app, on his phone, and he was able to call his parents and then say, hey, sensor's going off in my house, and I think there's water in the basement. Could you go check? And then since they only live a few miles away, they were able to go check, and they were able to get the problem under control. So it really helped them. I mean, the sensors, they're not very expensive, and they can sure save you a headache long run. The picture on the right is actually another sensor. And they have this set up by a lamp by their steps. And the original point was their son gets up earlier in the morning than they do because he has to go feed the 4-H cows. And when he heads down the steps, the light goes on so that he doesn't trip and fall on what might be laying on the floor to make his way out the back door. But the family leaves this on all the time because it's been really helpful, because when they're gone, grandma and grandpa come check the house. Well, they walk right by this sensor, and then dad gets the alert saying, oh, grandma and grandpa are checking the house. We know that they're there. So everything seems to be safe. But you know what? If they were gone and somebody walked into the house that wasn't supposed to be there, they would get that alert as well. So it's very handy for them to have that security in place for them for various different reasons. And here's this one picture you can see in the utility room. It says that it is dry right now at the time of this picture was taken. this is a screenshot of another individual who has this hunting lodge up here on the left, and it is on a pretty busy highway. It's not a major highway, but it is a good county road and well-traveled. And he actually worked with a local security system provider in town to set up his system. So he didn't go out and buy all these things. He had them set it up. But the way they have it set up is when the hunters come, he gives them a code. And when they enter the house, they have so much time to enter that code correctly into this pad. If the code is not entered correctly within the certain time limit, he gets an alert or a phone call actually on his phone saying there's somebody at your house. They're in the house. They're trying to enter the code. You might need to check on this. So maybe the hunter got the code wrong, or maybe it's somebody who shouldn't be there has the wrong code. And he can then check on how things are going or what's going on at his little rental here. It also has on the door a keyless entry system so that when hunters come week 1, he could give them one code. And when they leave and the next set of hunters come, he could give them a new code. Kind of like what Cassie said when she had different providers come, they had different codes. So she knew which ones were coming. Well, in his case, he had one code for 1 week, and the next week, the new hunters had the new code, just in case the other ones would want to come back uninvited. So it was just a way to keep things safe. He too used the door sensor. You can see here's a picture, and up here's a really close-up picture of him using the door sensor. So he also knew when the door was being opened and closed as well. And he had a front door and he had a back door to use this system. On the bottom right is just something to think about. Not very far from where I live, there is a greenhouse out in the country. And they had this sensor in their in this birdhouse, and it would go off. It would signal the lady in her greenhouse that somebody drove into their driveway. Well, as you could see, the hail got it. So it was a creative way of hiding their sensor, but now they're going to look for a new sensor and come up with another way to alert them when they have customers coming. So some more things to think about with the door locks. Do you want to take this, Cassie? Because you're really...
Yeah, we kind of hit on it again, making sure that the keypad suits your needs. There, like I said, there's some with actual buttons, some with touch pads, some even thumbprints now, where you can just touch your thumb to it and it'll go. Just taking into consideration the needs here. But we did hit on most of that.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is sometimes make sure if you need them to be waterproof, we probably do. And there was some thought that, like Cassie said, when you drive up and your phone may unlock your door. Some people have said that makes their phone battery go down faster. Some people said they haven't had problems. So just something to think about, and be sure to look at the options. But first of all, think about what your needs are. Something else to consider is an AgrAbility weather alert system. So this system, and there's a picture of it right here. There's a number of farmers in my area who use this. It tells them how much rain they got, what the wind speed is, the wind direction, the temperature. And you can see on the right, these are actually screenshots of the AgrAbility app from their phone that tells them what the temperature is, what the wind speed is, how much rain they have received, and so forth. And this farmer that I know, he's the one who he has a number of things in his house, but he now has an alert coming to him when the wind speed is an excessive amount. And because before he had this set up, they had a wind gust come through and he lost his doghouse, he lost his trampoline, and the grill fell over. So to save a little money, he's investing into the AgrAbility system so that those things don't happen again. And then if they do, he gets alerts on his phone. So maybe he could take some precautions or call grandpa to see, tie down this or move the grill or something like that. Some other things to consider when we're talking about agriculture is gate openers. And there are swing away gate openers and slide openers. They're powered either by battery through a solar power panel kit, or some have remote openings or a drive over wired sensor that's in the ground that you could drive over and then the gate opens. Some offer an app that work with Bluetooth. So you need to think about how close are you to Wi-Fi. So with this picture that you see here, you know, they might be pretty close to Wi-Fi because the house is right there and the sheds that they can use that. But if you're further away and out in the field, you might have to look at some other options, such as the solar panel option. There are two major companies that I've worked with farmers, and they're represented here, but there's probably others in your area as well when we come to gate openers. We have a number of producers in my area that are, they have quite a few circles of crops, and they also manage quite a few circles of crops. And for those people, having an irrigation monitoring system to help them monitor those, the sprinkler systems has been very time consuming. It was very time consuming, but now it saves them a lot. So depending on whether you are a Valley user, sprinkler irrigation system, or some other brand, they often have a system that you can buy. You actually pay for this per year, and you can through an app, either on your phone or on your computer or your iPad, you can see your circles. So what you see here is actual pictures of an individual's different circles. And if it's green, that's telling you that that irrigation system that is going, it is going and it's just fine. But if you get alerts, it will tell you, like they'll show up at like in different colors, and the different colors mean different things. It may mean that maybe your sprinkler head is plugged, or maybe for some reason you have low water pressure, or it just stopped rotating all by itself. And in that case, you kind of know then by using your app, which sprinkler system is having an issue. Normally the farmers I know, they go out every morning and maybe every afternoon to check on their system. Well, maybe if they just checked the system and then drove away, they're not going to check for that system again until the next day. Well, that system may be standing still and just pouring water on this little tiny area of ground. But if they had this system intact, they would be able to look on their phone, look on their computer, and be able to see if it's having problems, and then you actually go out and try to fix it. So it's expensive. I've talked to the farmers, they say it's very expensive, but in the long run, especially with the price of gas and time, it has definitely been worth it for them. When Wi-Fi is not available, so Cassie noted that, you know, because of COVID, we do have it available more than we ever did before, but there's still situations. And on the left, you can see this is a picture of a pasture, and we have a solar panel that is hooked up to a water pump to keep water flowing out in the pasture for the cattle that are out there. So obviously there's no Wi-Fi out there, but the solar panel, you know, in Kansas where we're at, there's always sun, or most of the time there's always sun. So solar panels are very useful for us. In the second picture, we have a heated water bucket, then we have a heated pet bowl, and then we have a heat lamp. And these are all powered by a thermostatic control outlet that in this case, it's the thermal cube display, and there may be other brands out there, but that's what we have most common out here. And some of my farmers and ranchers use these to keep the water from freezing, keep the heat lamp on, and they are set to go on at a certain temperature and set to go off at a certain temperature. So again, when Wi-Fi is not available, this is an option. Continuing.
I just want to know, we know
Yeah.
that we're almost out of time, guys, but we do want to have, you know, a Q&A at the end. So if you got time and you're able to stick around, we're trying to squish everything in. So just know we're aware, we're trying to hurry.
Okay, so this is just if grandma and grandpa, they're still on the tractor or whatever, but you can't take the keys away, but you're not sure about how things are going. Just some different things to consider. There is medical alert systems. So this is a system, this is something that you need to have cell service. Grandma or grandpa would wear it on their wrist or around their neck. and it will help you monitor where they're at. I do have a farmer who was he was a veteran, and the vet program actually paid for his monthly subscription, and it was cellular, and his family could track him wherever he was at, whether he's at home in his backyard with his tomatoes, or if he was out, 100 miles away out in the field, they knew where he was at. So there's different medical alert systems. And I do have a link here that talks about best medical alert systems that were reviewed. And that's something that you can look at later on. Also, if you have a sprayer, a combine, or a tractor that's probably within you've had it, it's only like 5 years or less old, those manufacturers have special programs that you can buy. So if you have a green machine, it's called Operations Center. If you're yellow or red, it's called Advanced Farming Solution. Or if you have New Holland, it's called PML Connection. And those are programs that were originally developed by the manufacturer so that they can monitor your tractor, combine, or sprayer and see what it's doing. So let's say you're out in the field and you're planting, but all of a sudden there's some issues with your tractor. Well, back at the shop, at the dealership, they can go online and see exactly what is wrong with your tractor. Then the maintenance person could drive out because they have GPS on this system, and they could find out exactly where you're at in which field and bring the right parts to fix what's going on with your tractor at that time. Now, because you pay for this, you own this, and you have access to this operating system that you too can go on. So if grandpa's out on this tractor, you can get on your computer, your phone, and look at this app and see, is that tractor still moving? Is that tractor in the right field? So it helps the dealership, but it also helps you as a family to keep track of people. And also, just a side note, most people have some kind of a smartphone. Remember, there's Find My Phone and pin location. I have a really good friend who I could tell lots of stories about her, but one of them is she did grow up in Memphis. She married a Kansas farmer. And one night, 2:00 in the morning, she woke up and he was not home, and she knew he was planting. She got on her phone. She looked at Find My Phone. She found where he was at in the field, and she noticed that his tractor was still moving. So she knew he was okay. And then he got home, and the next day poured down rain. So he had to get that stuff planted before he came home. So using the tools that you have on your smartphone, like Find My Phone or Pin My Location, are things that you have available already. And then other resources that we have is best security system for the farm. Like there's different security systems that are rated, and then Smart Homes Made Simple, a guide to smart home technology, put out by the Pennsylvania Assistive Technology Foundation. So just some resources, okay? And then I know we're out of time. Just know this is Cassie, this is Karin from Kansas AgrAbility, and we thank you for watching, and I think there's some questions.
Well, thanks again, Carrie and Cassie. Appreciate that excellent information. Lots of good resources there. So as Cassie mentioned, we are going to still have a little time for Q&A if you're able to stick around. If you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat or raise your hand under the reactions icon. There's a little bar that says raise hand. We can let you ask that question verbally. And also please check the chat area for the evaluation link to the survey. We appreciate you doing that. Do you have a couple of questions came in earlier? This one asks about just kind of a ballpark price in terms of cost of cameras, and do they require subscriptions?
Oh, that's a heavy hitter question. I will happily say that the range of prices for cameras is ever growing. So You can find them from $50 to a couple $100, depending on your price range and what you want it to do. Again, there's some that do it all, so you can have the Cadillac, or there's some that just do enough and you can have the Pinto, you know. And then as far as page subscriptions for monitoring, it's been my experience that for live monitoring, you don't have to pay a subscription. So if you just want to be able to look at a camera and see what's going on, no subscription necessary. If you want it to be able to record, send specific alerts for people, do any of like, what am I trying to say? Alarming, then it is a subscription based. And that's usually for the cloud services of the storage of recorded videos. Can state assisted projects help financing, selecting, and setting up smart devices like you would describe? I can't speak for all states. Every state has an assistive tech project, but they all function a little bit differently. Here in Kansas, yes, we can help with the funding on that, and the selecting, and generally the setting up, unless there's some kind of, you know, specific electrical things that need to happen. But as far as connecting and doing some training on that, we do that here in Kansas. I can't say for every state.
Mhm.
Okay, one more question that came in through the chat just recently. How did Grandma like being monitored? How did you approach the monitoring to her?
Sure. So that's a great question. And that's one that we've encountered in like some of our community living houses and things like that, where personal, you know, privacy is an issue. And if you go back to that slide of the pictures of my house, that camera in the back, you can see that it sees into Grandma's room, but it can only see part of Grandma's room. So we were very cautious of that. We don't have any cameras set up where, you know, there would need to be privacy things. And I did start integrating these things early enough in her disease that she was aware that they were there. And my grandma actually was very on board with knowing that she was safe. She liked being safe. It was very reassuring to her when, and you know, as the disease progressed, I wondered if it would confuse her if I just popped in on a microphone and started talking to her. And surprisingly, because it was my voice, she would often ask things like, well, where are you? And I'd say, I'm at work, but I can see you. And I know, you know, that you've fallen or that you need help and somebody's coming to help you. And that was very reassuring for her. And she was very on board with knowing she was safe. My grandma invested really early in security systems in her own home. Back in the day when it was this ridiculous loud buzzer and craziness. And so security was always big for her, but that is often a barrier. And I think making sure that you respect people's privacy and putting cameras where they're needed, and explaining, you know, that it's there to help keep them safe and peace of mind for everybody. That's a great question.
Okay, thanks so much again, Cassie and Karin. We're running out of time, so I thank everybody else for participating today. The next webinar in this series is scheduled for July 21, and it's titled Becoming an Informed Champion and Collaborator with Behavioral Health. We've got Bob Fetch and Chad Resniak from Colorado AgrAbility on that one. So if you signed up for this one, you should be able to get the information for the next one also. So again, thank you for everybody participating today, and we wish you a good rest of the day.